in our city. This morning, we will continue to engage further committees as we have outlined. This is a month-long program that the city will be rolling out to diffuse the simmering racial tensions in these communities, which have been living together for many years. eThekwini belongs to all who live in it. Therefore, we cannot have no-go areas for certain racial groups. The people of South Africa fought against all forms of discrimination, including racism, and we have a constitution that promotes, among other things, the freedom of movement. We acknowledge the anxieties and fears of people on all sides of this crisis, but the rule of law must prevail, even as communities try to protect themselves and their businesses, but the rule of law must take precedence. We call upon people of eThekwini to exercise restraint and desist from actions that might escalate racial tensions. We also urge members of the community to refrain from taking the law into their own hands and to work with the police to fight crime. Sifuna ukudlulisa ke leli khwelo kubo bonke abantu balapha eThekwini ukuthi ake sibuyise uzinzo, ake siziqhelanise nezenzo eingakhulisa ukuthi ubudlelwane bungabi khona phakathi kwemphakathi, sigcine sesicwasana nangokobuhlanga. Siyavumelana futhi ukuthi okubalekile ukuthi nakuba amalungu omphakathi enalo lonke ilungelo lokuzivikela, kodwa konke lokho akwenziwe ngendlela esemthethweni, abantu bazihlanganise kusetshenziswane namaphoyisa, ama-private security companies akwazi ukulandela umthetho ebambisene nemphakathi, kuvikelwe ukulinyazwa kwempahla, kuvikelwe ukubulawa kwabantu bakithi. Despite all the challenges we face as a nation, let us continue to work together to stabilize our city, united in our diversity, and to work hard to rebuilding a positive climate for investment in our city. The preliminary level estimates on the economic impact of the unrest include the following: 1 billion loss of stock, about 15 billion rand of damage to property and equipment, 5,000 informal traders affected, 40,000 formal businesses impacted, including small businesses, and a large portion of those who may never recover. 129,000 jobs at risk, and a large portion of that may be lost. Sithi ke lapha kwenzeke umthelela omubi kakhulu empilweni zabantu nasemnothweni wedolobha lethu. Kubalela ke ngaphezulu kwebillion izinto ezilahlekile emabhizinisini, impahla zabo kubalelwe ngaphezulu kwa-15 billion. Umonakalo nje wenzeke kwizakhiwo naseimpahleni zokusebenza ezikhona lapha emabhizinisini. U-55,000 kulabo abahweba emgwaqweni abathintekile impilo zabo njengamanje ezothwala kakhulu umzima ngoba bakwazi ukuhweba, bekwazi ukuphilisa izingane zabo nemindeni yabo. U-40,000 amabhizinisi aformal okuwukuthi athintakalile kakhulukazi kuleli dolobha lakithi, and ke okuningi kwabo okubalahlekele kusazoba nzima kakhulu ukuthi bephinde bebuyele endleleni yokwenza ibhizinisi. Sibalela kwaba 129,000 imisebenzi elahlekile nengasilahleke kusona lesi sikhathi, and ingadlula futhi kulesi sibalo uma izinto zingaguquki. The total impact on the loss of GDP to this region will be over 20 billion rands, including lost in production if the protest does not end now. We acknowledge that some members of the community are angry about the Constitutional Court decision to incarcerate our former president, Ubaba Jacob Zuma. Siyacela kumphakathi ukuthi konke sikwenzayo singabe sadicelela phansi impahla, kube ukuthi silindele ukuthi inkantolo zikwazi ukubuyisa umthetho usebenze ngendlela ukuthi kuhleleke kube nozinzo edolobheni lakithi laseThekwini, kanti futhi nobuholi bukazwelonke nebesifundazwe bubambisane ekuletheni isixazululo kulolu daba. Since last week, Our city has been engulfed by violent public protest, which resulted in the loss of lives and much damage to property. In eThekwini, over 20 people have died and lost their lives, and scores have sustained injuries during this period. Our teams are currently assessing the economic impact of the unrest, as we know that a number of factories and shopping malls were destroyed. Our hearts go out to the business sector whose businesses have been looted and destroyed. Our hearts also goes to the employees of those businesses who have lost their jobs, whom they're finding it difficult to sustain livelihoods. We are engaging with the sector through the newly established eThekwini Economic Council to understand how we can work together during this crisis and in the aftermath, so that we bring about stability and return to normal. Preliminary reports indicate that all our malls in townships in rural areas were destroyed and looted. Sadly, this has resulted in massive job losses and has certainly derailed our efforts to build township economy and rural economies. In addition, this could lead to widespread food shortages over the coming weeks and a sharp increase in the price of basic food and goods. Unfortunately, it will be our poor communities who are already facing the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, who will be at the receiving end of this looming crisis. We would like to commend our law enforcement agencies, including our Metro Police and SAPS, for their sterling work in arresting perpetrators of this unrest. Working with the SAPS and Metro Police, they have been able to arrest over 200 people who were handed over to 30 police stations around our city. We also would like to commend other emergency services who have been working around the clock under most trying conditions. Since the protests began, our Metro Police developed a safety plan which includes, among other things, increasing police visibility in a number of hotspot areas, particularly in malls and factories where most of the looting and vandalism is taking place. We are intensifying the trace and recovery process to retrieve stolen property and arrest perpetrators. As we speak, the Premier of our province, with our members of the council, we are working tirelessly, especially to make sure that we recover from all these conditions, and we also clear our roads, we clear our taxi ranks and the shopping centers where people need to go and access goods. Despite the sterling work of our police officers, we note with concern reports that some of them are involved in looting. While there may be some truth to this, in isolated cases, most members of the police are hardworking, law-abiding professionals who have worked very hard during this crisis. We must clear the air. Those who saw the police loading in a quantum some goods, those goods were not stolen. Those goods had to be taken away to be kept in a safe place, so that it also formed part of the evidence on the stealing that has been taking place. So that was not part of looting. So we want to clear that so that our committee members will get a clear perspective in that regard. It is time for the current unrest to stop, and for all of us to start rebuilding our beautiful city and the economy, which has already been battered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year, the city developed an economic recovery plan to respond to the challenges brought by this pandemic COVID-19. Through this plan, our key economic sectors such as tourism, construction, manufacturing were beginning to show signs of recovery. While the ongoing unrest has derailed this plan, we are optimistic that the initiatives we have outlined in our budget speech policy statement of reviving the city's economy will help us overcome this current crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, We want to remind our residents that if this unrest continues, it will have long-term devastating impact on our lives and livelihoods. Already, thousands of people have lost their jobs and will no longer be able to meet their financial obligations. As the city, we are also experiencing interruption in the provision of services because our staff is unable to travel to work if the situation persists. It might even affect the financial health of our municipality. We talk about refuse collection, services like water and electricity, and many other essential services which need to be rendered to our communities. The current unrest and looting must stop, and the law must take its course on those who continue to circulate voice notes and video footages that are inciting violence on social media. We want to repeat this and emphasize this. The current unrest and looting must stop, and the law must take its course on those who continue to circulate voice notes and video footages that are inciting violence on social media. This requires a collective responsibility from members of the community as well. It is such irresponsible behavior that has brought our city to where it is today. We call upon all residents of eThekwini to work with us to stabilize the city and rebuilding our economy. Let us continue to observe COVID-19 protocols and accelerate the vaccination program so that our lives can return to normal. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to convey our condolences to all the families who have lost, of those who have lost their lives during this protest. And those who are injured, we wish them a speedy recovery in hospitals. We also extend our condolences to the families of former KZN Premier Dr. Ben Ngubane, who passed away 2 days ago. Dr. Ngubane played a crucial role in bringing peace and stability in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. We also wish to express our sympathy to former President Jacob Zuma, who lost his younger brother, Mr. Michael Zuma. We wish the family strength during this difficult time, and many other families who lost their loved ones. Also today, the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Mr. Geoff Makubo, is being laid to rest after he succumbed from the COVID-19 pandemic. Our thoughts are with his family and people of Johannesburg during this time of bereavement. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, we'll take a round of questions and then we'll just keep doing that. I did not introduce myself when we started. I'm Lindy Okuza, the head of communications at eThekwini. So, do you have any questions for the mayor? I'll just take a badge and then we can continue in that vein. You will be the first one, number 2, number 3, number 4. So we'll take those first 4 questions and then we'll just take another badge if there's a need to do that. Let's start with you, ma'am.
Nashira Subial from East Coast Radio News Watch, Mayor. Just from your side, I'd like to know, after speaking to the residents of Phoenix today, what did you take out of their comments? And I'm all understanding about this point of we have to stop now and we have to rebuild, but how are we going to implement something like that? You spoke about hotspot areas. What are these, if you're allowed to divulge that at this stage, what areas are on your radar at this stage? And I have one last question. In terms of soldiers, lots of people calling into the station asking where they are. Do you know how many of them have been deployed to Durban, and are they active currently? Where are they?
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Chair.
Just to clarify, colleagues, it's not just the leaders from Phoenix that are in this meeting. It's leaders from Phoenix, Inanda, and Kwamashu. So it's not just Phoenix, just for everyone to be clear about that. Over to you, Mayor.
Maybe let's take the number of questions.
Okay, all right.
We'll respond to all of them.
Here.
Nabila Sheikh from ETV News. Mayor, can you give us an indication of how many people have been killed in this community? We heard from Pastor Mervyn already that that number is quite high. Many innocent lives of black people have been lost here because the roads have been barricaded. They're not allowed to travel around this area. Do we have any indication as to how many people have been killed here?
Okay. Third one.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Mayor, my name is Christian Butsch, reporter from a German newspaper called Die Welt. If you speak to some of the community members, they speak about a well-orchestrated attack and looting. So I know you briefly elaborated on this, but maybe you can actually give more detail about your knowledge on this matter.
Fourth one.
Hello, dear Mayor. My name is Bernd Dörjes. I'm from German media. One of the community leaders asked you if you have any idea where the army is, and if you know if and when the city is going to distribute food and water to residents. Maybe you have an answer to that.
But nevertheless, the four questions that you had.
Okay. Thank you very much for your questions, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, we must outline that who compose these gatherings that we are convening. It's very important to clarify that. We are convening local communities. They've got their structures, crime fighting structures, street committees. They are part and parcel of this. Some of them, they are working with private security companies. They are also part of these engagements. We also have the interfaith groups, because we have a firm belief and conviction that if you are dealing with the situation of this magnitude, you need to mobilize each and every sector of the society to take its own rightful position to influence, mobilize communities for calm. We are also having representatives from the taxi industry, because we also understand that the taxi industry is part of the leadership in the society, and they've been working with different structures, including the municipality. We have business people who are part and parcel of this meeting. They are also making their own contribution and raising perspective of businesses in all this situation. So what we have agreed upon, we have listened to the community of Inanda, Kwamashu, Zuma and Phoenix. What we are getting is that they are all agreeing that we were not supposed to land to where we are today. They are saying social media circulation of voice notes, which have been calling for violence, and I'm sure some of you are aware of one voice note, which says, go and loot all malls. Once you are done with malls, go to Asian communities, in inverted commas, go to white community areas, make sure that you kill all of them, then you also burn their houses. That was a voice note. Now that voice note is the work of the police and intelligence to find its originality. Where does it come from? What was the purpose of circulating such a thing? Because on its own, it's a criminal offense that was committed. So now the community is saying, let's unite. Let's silence the guns. Let's open up our communities, because there should be no boundaries. There should be no go areas. Phoenix is a place for all of us, because as people of eThekwini, we've been living together for many years, but we can't just be divided by one voice note which gets circulated with people who aimed to divide our communities, also to make the rise on the issue of this pandemic, of the racial cut that we are observing today and the racial tensions. So therefore, the committee, after analyzing all this situation, we have taken the following principled decisions. The first decision is that police must enforce the law. It shouldn't be left with communities to enforce the law in their own respective areas. You know, community members are not allowed to blockade the road and ask you where are you going and what are you doing. So the police must take their rightful position to put control and enforce the laws of the country, because that is their obligation. But secondly, the communities are agreeing that these gatherings should not become the talk shows where we'll come here and meet for the sake of meeting. So we are going to sustain these gatherings. But these gatherings will be charged with the following task. The first task is to ensure that on daily basis we assess the situation, what becomes the impact of our programs to stabilize our communities. Then we also agreed to form a multidisciplinary task team. That task team will include police. That task team will include people who are serving in structures of community, the leadership in a form of councillors from all these areas. This will include businesses, and that task team will be charged with a responsibility to spread a positive message. And that positive message, the time for us to unite is now, and to reject all the criminality that is showing its ugly face in our society. So the community is in unison that we must reject this at all costs, and we must unite our people because we are one community. We can't be divided on the basis of our color. And we also reject the notion that there is a white community era. In South Africa, there is no such after democratic dispensation. In South Africa, you buy a property wherever you feel you can afford to buy a property. Hence, there is no longer an area which is reserved for a particular minority group or a racial group in our society. People are at liberty to live wherever that they want to live as one community. So we really arm ourselves with knowledge to say, let's go back to our communities, educate them. Where do we come from with this democracy? Why do we agree that eThekwini belongs to all who live in it, black and white? So that's what the communities have agreed upon. But the other aspect is that the municipality must intensify its program, especially to deal with service delivery, including street lights which are not working, so that all areas are bright. We are able to isolate committee members who are walking on the street because they go to their respective workplaces. Some they go to other public amenities. So, and isolate them with the criminals who want to occupy the space. Then the other dimension which the analysis made here, we have all agreed. What informs this division? Firstly, we acknowledge that there are people who are raising their constitutional right to say the right which is talking to freedom of speech. If people are not happy with what they see, they are at liberty to express their feelings. People are expressing their feelings that they are not happy with the incarceration of a 79-year-old former president. So that's what they are expressing. So that is their constitutional right, and the judiciary will look at that because there is law in South Africa. But the other thing that people are saying is that in expressing our rights, let us be allowed to ensure that the communities, when we unite them on this plight, but we also prevent a situation whereby there are criminal elements who saw the vacuum and now they are occupying the upper stage in terms of driving this call for the release of President Jacob Zuma. Now the community here said, we are not going to venture into those discussions. They are not for us. We are awaiting the verdict of the Concord on the issues, so we must leave those legal matters to the legal people. But the call for President Zuma to be released is still there from the communities. Now those elements who have occupied these ranks now, they also want to pursue their own interest. And you'll have noticed that from what is transpiring in the community now, the burning of trucks is not for the first time trucks are burnt in KwaZulu-Natal. It has been there. That means now the interest group, which represents the interest of that grouping, is also now involved and is part of the call of freeing Mr. Jacob Zuma. But without the motives which were initially raised when people were making a genuine call for the fair treatment of former president. So it's their call, it's not the mayor's call, it's not the council's call, it's the call of people. Why I'm talking about it is because they've been interacting with us as leaders, that this is their concern, and they want a 79-year-old to be released. They are not saying he mustn't be sentenced, they are saying There are many sentences in South Africa, including house arrest, including the issues of petting, including the issues of options of fine, and all of that. They are starting to understand how the law works, but they are not the law experts, but that is their demand. Now, the agreement with the committee members who were here is that let us reject all these elements who want to come to this call of the genuine call of community and also occupy and elevate themselves as if now the call is for looting, as if the call is for burning shops, the call is for killing the economy, the call is for killing everything which will have some adverse implications to the people's lives. So therefore, that agreement is that when people are making their call, they should really isolate the element of criminality, and we are calling upon our people to ensure that we build a united front against crime so that we can defeat the elements of crime. Now, the issue of how many people have been killed, it's not for me as a mayor to make those pronunciations. It's for the Minister of Police and other law enforcement agencies who have received the reports. But for now, we have been briefed that in these racial tensions, there are about 5 to 6 people who have been affected. But that number cannot be confirmed now, up until police have got the records on what has transpired. So I don't want to put myself into estimations of what numbers have been affected. Other people have been injured. They are in hospitals and some have come out of hospitals. But the call still remains the same. Let's silence our guns, let's unite, let's build one community, let's reject crime, let's reject looting, let's reject burning of things, burning of property, burning of infrastructure, because this is going to affect poor people of this country, not only business people, but it will affect those who are employed in those shops, in those industries which have been banned as well. And also the food prices. The food security is one of the critical things. So we must allow ambulances to move around. We must allow emergency services workers to be on the roads to protect our communities and law enforcement agencies. We must also allow clinics and hospitals to reopen so that we are able to provide services which are expected to save lives. The army, firstly, our belief is that the law enforcement agencies are not the solution to this challenge. That is our stance. The solution to this challenge is communities rejecting all the criminality that we are seeing happening, because police alone cannot succeed in dealing with the situation. Whether we bring SANDF, we bring Metropolis, we bring SAPS, but that will not be an absolute solution. The absolute solution is to change our mindset. We do not need to destroy our livelihoods. We need to protect jobs. We need to protect economy. We need to protect those who will be going to school as schools will be reopening, as the president has pronounced. We need to ensure that those workers who still need to go at workplaces, they are also protected. But that comes from the community who have been involved in all this. Others have been calling for many solutions in the challenge that is facing us. I don't want to venture into that. Now, how many soldiers have been deployed to the city? I know the number, but I can't divulge the number for security reasons. When we divulge the number, how many of them in the city, we are now telling those who are doing things that what capacity do the security arrangements have. So we must leave that to the police, and they must manage the situation. But bringing law enforcement is not an absolute solution. An absolute solution is what we are doing, what we have initiated. Go to communities. All these leaders, they are not going to fold their hands and keep quiet. They are going back to their respective communities to mobilize people to say we have one vision of building non-racial South Africa, non-sexist South Africa, democratic, united, and a prosperous South Africa. So let's work together in that common vision instead of allowing elements who want to destroy our economy to be leading our communities. So leaders are therefore called to take their rightful positions in the fight against this scourge. And this pandemic of racial discrimination, if it's allowed to find expression in our communities, it's a very dangerous demonic pandemic which may destroy the entire South Africa. So it's better that we act now and we act decisively to distance ourselves from such attitudes. But lastly, now, how do you assess the economy of the city? The economy of the city still have some fault lines. Those fault lines are that the number of people who reside in this city are occupying the ranks of unemployment. The number of people in townships, in deep rural areas, they are stricken by poverty. The number of people in our society, they feel that we are not yet equal. So there are inequalities. So therefore, as the leadership of the city, as much as we are treating these incidents as an urgent task to intervene, but our task as well as leaders, which we have outlined in our budget policy statement, we need to transform the economy to work for the better, to work for everybody that resides in eThekwini. Because really, if somebody is running to a shop, takes a bottle of milk, then that somebody get killed, it raises a question. It says to us, have we done what we're supposed to do? Why people can still have no money to buy milk? Why people can still have no money to access other goods that they need? But by saying that, we are not condoning criminality. We are not saying people must go and loot because they are hungry. We are saying let us all work together to build an inclusive economy that will take into cognizance that there are people who are without jobs, there are people who've got nothing to eat at home, so we need to intervene. So what the city will do, as you note that during the lockdown levels of COVID-19, we initiated a social relief program. We are also going to be making pronouncements on those relief programs. The relief programs concerning businesses, concerning communities, poor communities, people who can't afford to pay for their services. And we have recently reaffirmed our policy that the indigenous communities, those who can't afford to pay for electricity, who can't afford to pay for water, we must continuously engaging in terms of addressing their challenges. So the indigenous communities will be provided with free electricity, as we always do as the city, free water as we always provide as the city, but ensuring that we do not put interest into the bills of those who may suffer the source of income and all of that. So that is part of the packages we are putting in place. Part of those packages is to ensure that those who can't afford, they are also being taken care of in terms of the social relief by bringing some food parcels or vouchers to assist them to continue to live as other people are living. So those are the kind of interventions that we'll be making as the city, and we'll be making pronouncement in that regard. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, is there another round of questions or are we all covered?
Maybe can I ask one follow-up question? Mayor, you said the setting in of law enforcement is not the absolute solution. At the same time, you said that it needs decisive action, which sounds a little bit like a contradiction to me. So that would be my one point. The other one, would there have been anything that you, as the administration of the city, could have done? Anything that you actually think of like self-criticism that you could have done to prevent this crisis? Any measures that you said, okay, we were falling short there?
If colleagues, you listen to the crisis and what people are calling for, it's above us. When they call for the release of former president, it's not our competency as a city. So we can't act on that. So if people expected the mayor that I must go through the judiciary and say release former President Jacob Zuma, it's not within the powers that I have. So now the crisis is not generated because people are just angry. They have expressed what makes them angry. So therefore it's the duty of those who are responsible for that responsibility to listen to the people, to see what they are going to do. But we are not going to interfere with the judiciary. So other people were saying the mayor was supposed to go and talk to the president and the premier to release former President Zuma. So there is separation of power in this country. So there is judiciary, there is executive, there is legislature. So now we need to allow things to flow in that way. But I think that what needs not to be missed here in this whole thing, and we don't need to lose sight. People have not been calling for former president not to be charged, or if he defied the cause, if there is such. But people are saying a 79-year-old who is not well can be kept for 15 months, and there is a new sentence which has just been introduced for him, which has never been implemented before. That's what people are saying. It's not what the mayor is saying, it's what people are saying. So people who are responsible must listen to that. So it's not us as the municipality that will listen to that and act in that. So those who are supposed to respond, they must respond to that call. It's the just call that people are making as I'm seated where I'm seated. So then those who are responsible must look toward that. I want to remind you as media, there was another call in this country. There were many people, I don't want to racialize the issues, but there were many people who were marching along our ocean here in this city, demanding, making a call that Mr. Jacob Zuma must fall. Why they were doing that? It's because the Constitution protects them to do that, to make that call. They said President Zuma must fall, must fall, must fall. So it's their constitutional right to do it because there's freedom of speech in South Africa. So now you can't understand that call, but you don't understand other calls when people are saying President Zuma must be released. It's their own constitutional right to express that particular call. So
but is it fair to translate into this?
now let me come to that. You have also asked me why we are saying the law enforcement are not the absolute solution. Let's clarify that matter. In this democratic dispensation, the government deliberately decided that we should not become a police state, but we should integrate the contribution of communities in the fight against crime. So hence, the establishment of street committees, the establishment of CPF, community safety forums, and many other forums are also gazetted in our books that govern this country. So therefore, if you just outsource that role of community and bring about stability, law enforcement can be deployed. Each and every house can have a police officer, but that police officer can't influence the mindset and the thinking of people. And people who've got the right and the sole responsibility to do such is community leadership, because they understand how people live and what are the conditions that are prevailing in the areas where people live. So therefore, they'll always provide leadership. So we are not saying we don't need police. Police must continue to enforce, intensify law enforcement, but more work must be done at a community level. Bring people together, give them the reasons why they should not continue to kill one another. Give them the reasons why they should not continue to do so. Give them more reasons why they must unite in the fight against all what is happening. So there's no one who's condoning the criminality that has taken place. But the call we are making as the leadership is that people, when they express their right, they must express it within the ambit of the law. Even to those who are blocking the cars, having roadblocks, they must allow the police to do that. Are we done?
One last one?
One last one.
Yes, one last one.
Dear Mayor, what is your personal opinion? Should Mr. Zuma be released, yes or no?
Now you are talking to the mayor, a person who leads everybody in this city, and embracing our unity and diversity in leading this city. So I can't have my own view on the matter that affects the society. I have the view of the people, the view of the people. The view, yes, but now you are not talking to me as ANC PEC member. Please organize another interview where I'll talk as ANC member. But now today I'm talking as the leader of this city, and we are calling for calm, we are calling for stability. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. If there are requests for a one-on-one with the mayor, we'll take those now, but for the rest, thanks very much for being here and for navigating all the barricades on the road to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Siyabonga. Thank you.
babe no-2 izobona nama